Hi everyone, this is Angelica. Welcome to That Disney Feeling. When I visit Disneyland with my kids, one of our favorite activities to do before we go is to watch movies that are represented in the parks. There are quite a few of them, so we don't always manage to watch them all before our trip, but we try to see as many as possible. How many you decide to watch will depend on how deep you want to dive, as there are some more obscure or older films and shows. Of course, there are also the classic Disney movies that we enjoyed as kids. For the purpose of this video, I'll be focusing on movies and TV series associated with attractions, as well as most of the shows and permanent parades. I won't cover movies associated with restaurants, food, or characters you can meet in the parks or see walking around because those can vary too much. And as for the fireworks and Fantasmic, I'm leaving those out to keep things less complicated. Also, use your discretion with your kids to know what is appropriate for them to watch at their age. Be sure to watch till the end of the video for a bonus tip that'll be sure to add magic to your next Disneyland vacation. Anyway, without further ado, here's a list of movies represented at Disneyland. We'll cover DCA in a part 2 video, which I will link to at the top of your screen. I've just listed the lands alphabetically, so we're going to begin in Adventureland. They renovated the treehouse in 2023. Prior to the renovation, it was Tarzan's treehouse. Now it's called the Adventureland Treehouse, inspired by Walt Disney's Swiss Family Robinson. And yes, that is its real name. There are some differences between the movie and the treehouse. At the Disneyland Treehouse, the family has 2 sons and a daughter, and in the movie there are 3 sons. They have lots of references to the movie and the original treehouse, but they've also done some original things too. They also have a reference to Tarzan's treehouse. There's an ostrich named Jane in a pen, and Jane is the name of the female protagonist in Tarzan. Next in Adventureland, we have the Indiana Jones Adventure Ride, which is based on the movie franchise, but not any one movie in particular. There are movie references, however, such as the boulder scene, and Indy mentions how he hates snakes. Also, the Jeep that you see at the front of the ride is an actual movie prop from Raiders of the Lost Ark. George Lucas owns it, and it's on loan to Disneyland. There's also a minecart from the Temple of Doom and some other Easter eggs in the queue. Moving on to the Jungle Cruise now. It was not based on any movie. It's an opening day attraction from 1955. In 2021, however, Disney made a movie called The Jungle Cruise based on the attraction. So if you want to see that, you can, but I don't think there's any movie references in the ride. Changing lands now to Critter Country. Here we have the Davy Crockett Explorer canoes. Their name is based off a Western miniseries that aired on ABC in 1954 and 1955. I believe there were 5 episodes of the show. Then there's The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, which is based on a 1977 movie of the same name. And of course, the main attraction will be Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which will be opening later this year in the late fall or early winter of 2024. It isn't based on the movie exactly, but it takes place after the movie, and it's a new story for us to experience. The animatronics look so amazing from the sneak previews that we've seen. We're headed to Fantasyland now, where most of the Disneyland rides based on movies are. These are the bulk of the ones that you might want to watch before your trip. The movie Alice in Wonderland has 2 rides based off it, Alice in Wonderland and The Mad Tea Party. Dumbo also has 2 rides, Dumbo the Flying Elephant and the Casey Jr. Circus Train. Next up is the movie The Sword and the Stone, which King Arthur Carousel is named for. You can also find the Sword and the Stone right in front of the carousel. See if you're worthy to pull it out on your next trip. There's also a Mary Poppins reference on the carousel by way of Jingles the horse, who received some Mary Poppins and Julie Andrews decorations for Disneyland's 50th anniversary. Continuing on in Fantasyland, we have Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, which is themed after The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, a 1949 film. The film has 2 parts. The first part is The Wind in the Willows, based on a novel by Kenneth Grahame, and this is the one you'd want to watch before your trip, as these are the characters that the ride is based on. The second part of the film is The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's not related to the ride, and is based on a book by Washington Irving. It's a bit scary for kids. Moving along from Mr. Toad's is Peter Pan's Flight, of course based off Peter Pan. Pinocchio's Daring Journey and Snow White's Enchanted Wish are inspired by their respective animated movies as well. The castle at Disneyland is themed after Sleeping Beauty, and there's a castle walkthrough with dioramas of the movie as well. And if you really want to be a stickler for details, there is a 1959 movie called Third Man on the Mountain, which inspired the Matterhorn bobsled ride. Staying in Fantasyland, It's a Small World has various characters from the movies represented in the different country sections of the ride. Another ride that has a lot of characters in Fantasyland is the Storybook Canal Boats. First, you go through Monstro's Mouth. He's a big whale from Pinocchio. Next, you can see the homes of the three little pigs, Fifer, Fiddler, and Practical. After this, sometimes the cast members say "just around the river bend" in their script, which is a reference to Pocahontas, although that's the only reference and they don't always say it. Other movies referenced in the ride are Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Aladdin, Snow White, and Cinderella. They also mention a Silly Symphonies animated short called Lullaby Land briefly in reference to some plants. After that, they show you Toad Hall from Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, which I mentioned earlier. Other movies represented on the ride are Frozen, Pinocchio again, and The Little Mermaid. There are also 2 shows that you could watch at the Royal Theatre, and those are Beauty and the Beast and Tangled. I think that wraps up Fantasyland. Pirate's Lair on Tom Sawyer Island is part of Frontierland according to the app, and that's where we're headed next. Let's hop aboard a raft that takes us to an island that Walt Disney himself designed. Originally, it was Tom Sawyer Island, based off the novels by Mark Twain, of which Walt Disney was a fan. So this was the source material for the island that Walt designed. But technically there is a movie too, as in 1995, Disney made a movie called Tom and Huck based on characters from the books. In 2007, after the success of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Disney renamed the island Pirate's Lair on Tom Sawyer Island and added interactive elements around the island from the movies. And finally, the third movie or show represented is Davy Crockett. According to a 1956 Disneyland brochure, the fort, called Fort Wilderness, is an outpost set in 1812, and Davy Crockett is one of those reporting to Major General Andrew Jackson. You used to be able to go into the fort, but now it's a cast members only area. Anyway, there's a lot of interesting history woven into the story of Pirate's Lair on Tom Sawyer Island. DaveLandWeb.com is a website with a lot of information on it. After we leave the island, we head over to Mickey's Toontown. The whole land is based off characters that you know and love from various Disney movies featuring Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Goofy, and more. Specifically, Chip and Dale's Gadget Coaster is a ride based off the beloved mischievous chipmunks. They had their own show, The Rescue Rangers, but they're also featured in many Mickey movies and shows as well. I think technically the ride is themed after the Rescue Rangers though, because Gadget Hackwrench was a character in the Rescue Rangers, and even the Disneyland app says that she created the coaster. Then there is Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, which is based off Who Framed Roger Rabbit. If you really want to incorporate all the movies and shows, you could say that Goofy's How to Play Yard is inspired by Goofy's various how-to series, although there isn't technically one called How to Play. There are some Easter eggs in the attraction from the series as well. Now we're heading to New Orleans Square, where we have the Haunted Mansion, which was not based on any movie. However, since then they've made a couple of Haunted Mansion movies. I don't think there are any references to the movies in the ride, but I could be wrong on that. Similarly, Pirates of the Caribbean was made not based on any movies, but since then they've obviously created a whole franchise and they've incorporated Jack Sparrow from the movies into the ride. Moving on to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and obviously the whole land is based off of the Star Wars movies, mostly the sequel trilogy, which is 7, 8, and 9. However, they have been incorporating characters from the recent shows like Ahsoka, The Mandalorian, and The Book of Boba Fett, although I guess Boba Fett was in the original trilogy too. There are 2 rides in the land. There is the Millennium Falcon, Smuggler's Run. It isn't based on any specific movie or show, although it does have Hondo Ohnaka in the ride. And he's not in any of the trilogy movies, but he is in 2 animated series, Rebels and Clone Wars. And here's a fun fact. The actor who voices Hondo is also the voice of the current Winnie the Pooh. If you look into the voice actor, Jim Cummings, you'll find that his voice is behind many of the characters who you know and love. He's very talented. I just think it's funny when you take a space pirate, Hondo, and Winnie the Pooh, and the fact that they're voiced by the same man. Quite the contrast. Anyway, Star Wars Rise of the Resistance is based off the sequel movies. There's Poe Dameron, Rey, Finn, BB-8, Kylo Ren, and General Hux on the ride. Now we're off to Tomorrowland. We begin with Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters, which is of course Toy Story. We also have Star Tours, The Adventures Continue, which is based off of Star Wars. You become part of various scenes from the movies, and they usually add in new scenes from whatever new movie or show is coming out around them. For example, as I'm recording this, they came out with new scenes for Season of the Force featuring Ahsoka and Cassian Andor. Also in Tomorrowland, you have the Finding Nemo submarine voyage, which is based off of Finding Nemo. And on the surface of the water, they have Hank the Octopus. So I guess technically you could say it was inspired by both Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. Thinking of the park as a whole, it's evident that several lands are based on movies or shows. Take Mickey's Toontown, for instance. The entire land draws inspiration from cartoons and shorts, with numerous references to characters and elements from those shows and movies. Tomorrowland isn't based on any movie, but in 2015 there was a movie that came out called Tomorrowland that has a few things from Disneyland in it, but the movie and the land aren't really related at all. The movie wasn't very successful. And then, of course, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge is based off the movies, the sequel trilogy in particular. Next up, let's chat about the Magic Happens Parade at Disneyland. At the beginning, you'll see familiar faces like Minnie Mouse, Goofy, Chip, Dale, Pluto, and Donald Duck. Mickey Mouse is featured on the first float. As the parade continues, it features characters from newer films and classics. Look out for floats for Moana, Coco, and Frozen. Next, we see characters like Pinocchio and the Blue Fairy, Aladdin and the Genie, Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, and the Fairy Godmother from Cinderella. The finale showcases floats inspired by Cinderella, The Sword and the Stone, Princess and the Frog, and Sleeping Beauty. And finally, let's dive into something that isn't a movie or show, but still adds a touch of magic to Disneyland. The next time you're by the entrance to the Indiana Jones Adventure ride, look to the right for a tree that has a little house nestled into the base of it. It belongs to Patrick Begorra, the Little Man of Disneyland. He's a character from two little golden books, The Little Man of Disneyland and The Little Man of Disneyland, A Change of Luck. In the stories, Patrick, a mischievous leprechaun, resides in that very tree. They're cute and fun to read. In the second book, they reveal that he likes to spend time at the Storybook Canal Boats after the park closes. I haven't seen any reference to him on the ride yet, but that would be fun for them to include in the future. So that's the list I've come up with of all the movies and shows that are currently represented at Disneyland. I have a printable that you can use as well if you want to check things out. Just click the link in the description. That's all for today. If you're planning any upcoming Disneyland trips and have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future videos, feel free to share them in the comments below. Your input matters. Thanks for spending time with me, and I wish you a truly magical day. And hey, if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps support the channel.